With this, I think we'll probably call upon our colleagues Suraj and Prashanth to talk deeper in terms of what is the foundational elements required, how can we move forward to get them onboarded in terms of the implementation. Welcome on board Prashanth and Suraj.
Thanks, Kumar. So I thought I'll start with saying good morning, but good morning was already used. Then Uma said happy morning. So I was just thinking what to say, right? And I say the right word is delighted morning. The reason being, we have been having a interesting session so far. A lot about connected enterprise, a lot about GenAI, what is the future, what we need to do, and things like that. So I think it's good to say delighted morning. So what we do now is, in this session, we look at the nuances of integration, that is an enterprise integration, and the process automation as is what they bring in and how they are going to change the foundations of the connected enterprise. And we go a little bit deeper into what has been covered in the previous session, and that's the focus area for us. Let's look at this way, right? So again, before that, I'm happy to share the stage with Suraj and Rashmi, who's going to join us a little later. So when we talk about the connected enterprise, so before we go into dig deeper into the connected enterprise, right? Let's look at what has been the marvel of past. Marvel of the past. Let me set the context for that, right? It's a meaning that was connecting. It was it was supporting to exchange information in real time and help to grow the business. If you look at it from that perspective and this room, so how can we look at it? What has been that marvel of past? Any guesses? Could be. Like somebody may say ESBs, APIs, because we talk about connecting, we talk about real time, and we talk about the business growth. Not exactly. So we are talking about the phone, right? This has been a phone there for a long time. So what it used to do, right? It used to connect people. It used to help people talk to each other and understand, whenever they wanted, they could connect that when the other person is around there. Then it helped them having a good experience because you get to connect with the person who you are and understand what has been going on in their life and things like that, a good experience. And of course, it is also bringing the ability to know each other, get connected, all of them. But that's not what I'm talking about. In this current scenario, right, this phone, if you look at it, right, it's connected, but it's still not connected. So what it means? Well, there is a connectivity, but it is still disconnected. Let's say today I want to talk to someone, right? I have a mobile phone, I pick up the phone and say, hey, wherever I am, right? Whether in my bedroom or I'm in the office room or wherever, I just pick up the phone and call up someone, and then I can do a video call, so I'm well connected. But can this thing do it, this kind of a phone? No. Somebody has to be there on the other side. The experience, so when you talk about, hey, so when I am using my phone, newer phones, when I talk about it, hey, when did I call this person, what conversation I had, what has been the earlier messages, things like that, right? So overall, the continuity of the experience would be there. But this phone cannot bring that. Then the communication, right? The communication part, what happens, so let's say, when we are using this phone, right now we are in the satellite connection, so there are things like that, it's a seamless connection, it's an uninterrupted connection most of the time. But actually in this phone, if there are the downtimes and things like that, you are not able to connect. So that was the situation in the current scenario when we compare the old phone and new phone. And what I'm actually alluding to, right? I'm sorry. So that's where the connected enterprise comes in, right? That is where we are all heading towards. So what I mean with that is when we are having everybody connected, right? Everybody make sure there is a continuity in the experience, and everybody who is going to have the experience of knowing and understanding the past and having the complete picture, that's where something like the connected enterprise can make a lot of difference. So what's connected enterprise, right? So connected enterprise is built on twin, the twin pillars. That's about the hyperautomation and the enterprise integration. So when we talk about enterprise integration, right? Enterprise integration is not just about connecting two different systems and the information exchange, right? It is much beyond that. It's about how intelligently it orchestrates between the data and bring the data and processes together between the various distributed environments like the cloud, on-premise, or even like the remote system, edge device, or some things like that. It brings all of that together. So by having this kind of a the enterprise integration, right, you can improve you can innovate more, right, and you can accelerate through the innovation. You can unlock the business values, and some of these benefits are there. Then comes another pillar is about the hyper-automation, right? Hyper-automation is all about the workflow automation, but it also works seamlessly with the integration and brings in a seamless flow of information, the seamless connectivity between the different entities across the facets of enterprise, connected enterprise. So moving on to the next one. So we talked about the connected enterprise, right? Like, and then what kind of role the enterprise integration and the hyper-automation playing the role. So if you look at it, right, like, how we actually get that formed. I think it's not something new I'm going to talk about, but I'm trying to get into a picture where, like, how this gets transformed and, like, what kind of newer things that we need to look at. So connected enterprise, when we talk about it, the eventual picture is like, there are consumers, right, and there are the providers. You have to bring them together, help them talk to each other, like, do these business processes, exchange information in real time or whatever. That's what it's all about. So it was all about connecting. So then what happens? In order to do this, so what we need? So we need some of these integration components that brings in the information coming from the provider system and make it available for the end systems. So something like, the event messages, right? Something like, data integration tools or an application integration tools. They sit and they become the technical enablers of your overall connected enterprise. Then comes the other aspects, the modern aspects, what we have been talking about, is the one which will help in the business-focused applications or the channels, like in the consumer systems. That's where we have the API management, then the product integration, event management, BPM. So in a summary, so all these things come together to build the so-called the connected enterprise, enabling the information flow and things like that. But it doesn't end here, right? So then we have things like the security has to be there. Then there is about the governance has to be there. I think we have been talking in the morning as well. And then we have the enablers. When we say enablers, like, that will help in doing this implementation, then development, and rollout, and things like that. And of course, the guardians. We talk about how do we monitor it, how do we take care of it, how do we secure the things and things like that, right? But we stop here, right? I think now it's a typical picture we have been seeing for quite some time. But now today's talk is all about GenAI, right? How GenAI is making a difference in this kind of a thing, right? That's what I'm trying to come here is. So GenAI, so when it comes in, it brings in a completely different way of doing things, completely a different way of executing things, completely a different experience for the people across. So what we are trying to cover here is, so when a GenAI is brought into the connected enterprise, so it brings in many aspects, right? The way you do your API management solution will be different. The way you do partner integrations will be different. The kind of experience that we do, or for that example, the hyper process automation that we do in the form of a BPM, how we do it. And of course, not just there in the security as well as on the observability aspect and everything. Like, it completely changes. Let me take an example here, right? Like, what I mean here. So typically, I take an example of how an API solution. I think we were talking about, Uma was talking about his experience of the booking his holidays and things like that, right? Instead of that, I think something similar example if I take, like, for example, financial institution. So what it does is, like, it has a typical API solution to expose its information or, like, the banking functionalities to the external customer. And then, like, how when this API solution, like, when it has to look at some of the customer information, like, how does it handle? Let's say we talk about minus GenAI. Like, what we do is the information all the APIs being invoked and they are getting the information. And then what happens, the information is getting collected about the customers. And then what happens, that information is definitely, there is an analytics happening and it creates an insights. But look at the cycle, right? The whole cycle is like, it has to be more reactive. The information that is coming in and that is processed, it has its own cycle, then create an insight, and then you send the information back to the consumer or a customer. So what it means, there is a delayed cycle. And the current world is not about, right? Everything wanted in immediacy, things like that. But that's what the GenAI will make a difference. I'll give you an example, right? One, suppose I'm calculating this, like I'm, the information that are coming from the APIs being invoked, right? And there is some issues or some information that is, requested as part of it, or there is some issue. Let's say instead of taking that whole information all the way there and like get the data and do it, if you bring a GenAI component or a GenAI framework within your API management solution, what it can do is it is able to understand your request, and it is able to create the response which is based on the situation, based on the time, and based on the requester. It's all done in a hurry, like in immediacy, and then the information sent back. And look at the customer experience it is creating as such. That's what I'm talking about the GenAI as such. Let's look at another example, right? Say on the security aspects, right? So if you also look at when the APIs that are coming in, and this solution is sitting over there at the API gateway itself, right? And it is able to do an anomaly detection, right? Or it is able to predict whatever the issues could be there, and then immediately acts on it. And look at the way the kind of experience it brings in. So that's the kind of an influence GenAI is going to have in a connected enterprise. And of course, I just took an example of API management, but it's a similar case. A GenAI can be uploaded, can be applied, can be implemented, can be infused across the various layers. And I only have a blue marks around a few of them, but the way I look at it, I think it can be extended. And it's all about the imagination, right? It's all about the vision or innovation that we can bring in. And GenAI can sit everywhere, or AI can sit anywhere and bring a lot of intelligence, but a lot of the smartness into the system. Then let's talk about how do I make this happen? We talked about, right, like, we will bring in the GenAI, we'll bring in the better customer experience, hyper customer experience, like, we'll have that, this and all, right? How do we do that, right? So that's where there are a few aspects that we need to consider. One is about, I think some of the, earlier Rowan was talking about how, as a developer's level, like, how this GenAI is making a difference. Yes, we need to bring the GenAI as a component, as part of the, in your entire, integration SDLC. So be it like, you were talking about, understanding the requirement, and you are going to, create a models around that, like, increase the speed of the way you design it, like, and you do the code development, test it, deploy it. Across the line, we can bring in a GenAI and make the things work, right? That's, I think, we're already seeing that it is happening in the various different, the packets, but I think that's definitely a possibility that we need to look at. Then we're coming to the end user customer experience. So end user customer experience could also be, end user is not just about the customer, right? It could be a developer, or it could be a business people, like, how GenAI come and bring in, create intelligence, create the, insights, right? And can give them the feel of, like, how these things can be completely differently looked at. Then the collaborative intelligence. So we talked about the collaborative intelligence, like, earlier, the collaborative was more on the people and things like that. But you actually dig deeper if you have to look at the IT level. So the collaboration is about your machines, collaborative about your systems, collaborative about your, the people, and everything that helps in building the connected enterprise, they all need to collaborate. And that's where, like, the GenAI kind of the component sitting over there can get every information, act on it, create an insights, and then, like, create an actions around that. That all this self-healing, whatever that comes in. That's what the collaborative, the intelligence I was talking about. Then comes two things which have been there for the things, right? I think we're going to have an interesting session a little later in the day that's about the observability and the self-healing. I think I don't want to talk more about it. There will be a much more detailed information on that. But importantly, these are the ones which keeps our, the connected enterprise healthy and keep moving. That's where the observability and self-healing can make the difference, the way we manage our platforms, the way we, like, the maintain our platforms, or how we act on the various situations of the, the production runtime, things like that. So moving on to the next one. So we talked about, hey, what are the new components are there? Like, what are the aspects of, hybrid integration, or what are the aspects of hyper-automation, right? Like, how GenAI can bring in. So what does it mean? So it creates a lot of outcomes, right? So one of them is about, what we have seen is, like, the productivity improves, right? Basically, when the productivity is improving, the cost is actually coming down, like, the overall the cost, the TCO comes down. That's number one. Then the way we deliver the projects, right? I think earlier, again, I take the example of what Rowan was mentioning, right? Like, the time taken, right? Or even Ved was mentioning, right? You think about it, like, with the 800 interface which were delivered in a month, Suppose if GenAI was there, I'm just wondering, bringing everything as part of it, it could have been in 10 days, 15 days. That is definitely a possibility if you apply in the right way. That's what I'm trying to bring it, right? Then the kind of experience, it's completely new thing. I think every day we know that I talked about earlier, the immediacy with which, or the contextuality that customer wants to bring in, all of that, like, that can be achieved if GenAI sits in the various parts of our connected enterprise at the various phases, like, either while designing or developing or testing it, or when it is runtime. And of course, one important thing with this, I'll hand it over to, Suraj, talk about what is more important is, like, build. For all this to happen, we need a platform that is AI-driven, right? Which can bring AI at every stage of your, being at the design development stage or during the implementation stage or like in its runtime. The second one is having an API-first approach. Bring an API that's more easy to compose, more easy to build your solutions in a faster way. And third, of course, the need for a hybrid ecosystem, right? It should be ready and crafted to be running on any of these things. With that, I'm setting a stage for Suraj to take it forward, and over to you, Suraj. But I think Suraj would, sorry, thanks.
Great, thanks very much. I got the clicker here. Morning, so, look, a lot of technology, things have evolved over the years. We talked about the connected enterprise, all of that, right? So I just want to look at a little bit about how integration has evolved. Way back then, people built point-to-point custom integrations. They still do it. Still happens, right? Stuff comes in, but the new stuff comes in, but the old things don't go away. You have the ESBs, the SOA sort of, the era came in and, there was a lot of promise. Today, there's still hundreds, thousands of ESBs still running out there. And then, we got all this cloud, and then iPaaS, right? Integration platform as a service. We need to connect some Salesforce to ServiceNow or whatever it is. We got REST and API management. APIs became connectivity. And then all of that's there. All of that exists in the enterprise today. But there's literally a new way of doing things. And that's fundamentally going to be different, right? And that's about hybrid integration and AI and API-powered integration. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. Hybrid is key. It's not just about iPaaS. It's not just about cloud. There's private clouds, public clouds. People are talking about taking more of their workloads back on-premise because the cloud bills are getting really, really big. They're concerned about their AI models and the data all being shared. There's this trade barrier, tariffs and barriers. So much going on in terms of complexity that, the world is really going to look at hybrid. It's not about just as a service in terms of what it is. And that's what we believe in, very much connected to what Pragma believes in terms of hybrid integration that's AI-powered and API-driven in terms of the future. But at the same time, we can't forget about what exists out there today. What exists out there today in terms of, all the decades of innovation that's, you put in there and how do you bring that forward as well. So I'll talk a little bit about what is this whole hybrid integration and AI-powered all of this mean. Traditional iPaaS, right, as it was good, had a lot of problems. Somebody had to go build a connector, maintain a connector, to build the integrations, go look at the API specs, those specs changes, hundreds of connectors out there, and that became a major thing. And then there were like a lot of workflows that were very rigid. Hey, I'm going to go connect this, then I'm going to create a transaction. I'm going to do, even though it was graphical in its sense, I have heard customers say it takes me about 200 hours to just build a workflow, and then, I have to go test it and deploy it and maintain it and manage it, and some API spec changes, I got to go update that again. A lot of challenges. People started coming very static, still very time consuming in terms of what we want to do and how we wanted to connect, applications. And so really what's happening is in the next generation, we talked about, right, how, Prashanth mentioned, others mentioned in terms of AI, is these things will be able to adapt in real time. And we'll talk about it a little bit, and I'll show you a couple of examples as well. How AI agents can really look at the API spec. They can look at what you want to build, what the intent is, and really interpret that intent and build what you want to do generate the workflows on demand, change the workflows on demand, adapt those. That's really the future of integration. And take all the APIs that's there. There's tons of APIs, APIs that are exposed, and build integrations to connect them through the APIs or through other means that we want to do. So really, when you look at, what is the end result, right? Enterprises want to be much more dynamic. We talked about the connected enterprise. If they're connected, but they're static as business changes, it's not helpful. So we want to be dynamic, much more scalable, and sort of smart and intelligent on how they adapt. That's really what is the new paradigm of integration and what it's shifting towards. It's not an overnight shift. Yes, there's a lot of hype about AI and MCP and all these other things, but definitely is going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4 years in terms of how we want to do, and you want to be ready for that in terms of what it is. Same thing with developers, right? What is the role of the developer? It's going to change a lot. Before, they were going to go build connectors, they were going to go build some sort of, workflows and put them out there, and somebody would come in and say, hey, I need this change, I need that. The role of the developer is going to be twofold. Some simple things are going to get fully automated, right? You can ask AI and say, hey, do this for me, and it can do. The other thing is the developers are going to become orchestrators. What does it mean? They're going to work with the AI and say, do this. It's not going to come back with exactly what they want. They're going to say, make these changes, do X, Y, Z, go put in some manual things around. They're going to leverage a lot of the APIs to compose all of those aspects. So developers and the role is constantly changing. We heard before, right? It's about developers who can leverage AI. Those are going to be the future, and really aligns with this thinking in terms of same thing for integration, in terms of the role of the developers and how they're going to be able to leverage the piece that they want to get out of the AI and build integrations and in terms of what we want to do. So it's really not just the tools themselves are changing or evolving. The role of the developers, the role of the citizen integrators that I'll get to is also changing in terms of where they're going with the integration. And literally, there's a new paradigm of integration. And how do we go about doing this? So there's two aspects of integration in AI. And the bottom you'll see here. Integration is also, one is enabling AI, and AI is powering integration. We got to look at both aspects of this. So what do I mean, right? If you have AI that you need to build into your tool, into an application, maybe it needs data from, a system here, a database there, wherever it is. What do you need for that? Integration. So integration is enabling AI. And AI is also powering integration from the perspective of, hey, within the integration tools itself, there's AI to make it simple, make it flexible that I talked about in terms of what we want to do. And this sort of helix, right? One is powering the other, and you need more applications need AI, and you need more integrations and more of this. And it's really nice. Or sometimes it can even be if you're not doing it properly, it can become a vicious cycle in terms of, hey, how do I do this and how do I get out of this in terms of what we do? So let me dive a little bit deeper into this, right, in terms of one. Great thing about AI is, Roman talked about this unmet needs of integration. Hey, you got a lot of these specialists doing this, but, what about the business technologists? There was always this promise that, the graphical tools and low code, no code, business technologists could build integrations and deploy it and test it and manage it. And yeah, for certain things it was good, but it never felt like the business technologists could really go in and do the integration. Now with AI, it's changing, right? It's really changing where it's really democratizing the integration in terms of what it is. Yes, you still need developers. They're going to be doing a lot of the complex things that they need to do, but it enables that, business technologists, the citizen integrators to build more of the integration, and all those unmet needs that they had in there before, the organization is able to create more and more integration. So you'll see a little bit of what we have in the IBM Web Methods hyper integration, a lot of this powered through Watson in terms of, hey, I need to create this, it's like an example here. There's a campaign that want to be created to boost sales for the spring, and how do I go about doing that? I need to connect some Salesforce, something here, all of that stuff. The Marketo, the marketing system. In the afternoon, we'll talk a little bit more about the details. How do you do that, right? You can go ahead and create the campaign, connect it to the CRM system. And it's not just about development. A lot of times people focus on development. To a certain extent, development is one time. You need to do it or adapt it. It's the full life cycle. Develop, test, deploy, manage. A lot of you know the complexities of management. Nobody wants to receive the call, weekend or something like that. The system is down. I couldn't know about this. Think about AI not just for development, but throughout the entire integration lifecycle in terms of what needs to be done, where do you need to go, and when do you want to deploy that. So what's happening? Second thing is about AI empowering the specialists as well, not just the citizen developers. It has so much more intelligence in terms of what they need to do, and it becomes a huge productivity boost. It's not that developers are dumb, they can't do certain things, but it's a huge boost, right? Even for all of us. I'm sure you've used AI, you could gone and figure out and written 5 sentences about something, but somebody asked about it. AI becomes a tool in terms of enabling us to go and interact and come up with a better sort of wording or phrasing through that. And here's a great example. This is the example of the IBM API agent. It's going through the API spec, and it's saying, want to make it open API compliant. What are the changes and some of the modifications I need to make, and what are the issues you see here? Gives you a whole lot of recommendations. This is about AI enabling the technical person, the developer as well, providing productivity. Hey, you go from Open API spec 2.0 to 3.0. What are the changes in my API that I need to make to go from API spec 2.0 to 3.0? Boom, boom, boom. Here's the things that we get. Huge productivity boost in terms of what you need to do. So GenAI enabling the citizen developers, all those unmet needs, all of those things that they need to do. GenAI enabling the integration specialist in terms of really enabling them and making them more productive, making them more better so that they can spend time on more and more complex tasks in terms of what they want to do as well. So here's the other thing. In terms of AI, right? All of you, I'm asked as customers, have been asked, right? I need to put AI into my applications, right? Hey, how are you going to make these applications smarter? How are you going to, sort of leverage, have more of a business impact in terms of what you want to do? So that is where, AI is also enabling in terms of, helping you bring, AI into all of the applications that you need to do, right? You may need to connect to ChatGPT, Watson, whatever it is. How do you ensure when you connect to all of these things that you're not sending proprietary data? You're not sending some of your secret sauce in there. And there's so much out there, right, in terms of Kafka sprawls and number of APIs and all these operational things. How do you bring all of that stuff? So that's where AI is needed for your integration projects as well in terms of driving that. The thing is, we're providing, I want to talk a little bit about, AI enablement, right, throughout your business lifecycle. Rowan talked about this. At IBM, we're providing a common integration solution across all of the integration patterns, be it through APIs, for applications, for B2B, and you want to bring in AI throughout this. And there's a couple of different aspects of this in terms of what you want to do in providing, AI into your integration. First is, you heard a lot about agents, right? There's, I will say, a lot of agent washing that's going on out there. There's AI washing that's going on out there. But regardless, we know AI agents are going to be a key part of what you build, what you develop, not only in your application, but also in terms of how we are building our integration solution as well. How are you enabling that? So you got to make sure you're providing the ability for agents and agentific AI in terms of what we do. The second thing is not just about AI agents, but there's a lot of different AI services that are going to come about. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail in the upcoming slide. You may have heard about like MCP, Model Context Protocol. How are agents going to talk to each other? Before you had like APIs talking to each other, right? How do you develop that? All of that becomes a core part of your integration services and enabling AI in the applications that you develop. So let me talk a little bit about, there's a lot of busy slide. Don't get too much hung up on the slide itself. But I want to mention a couple of things, right, when you're enabling AI. One thing that you've heard a lot about is MCP. So much industry momentum behind that, or the Model Context Protocol. This is basically a way, for agents to communicate, with each other, and to enable you to communicate with the various parts of the iPaaS. So here's some of the things that we're doing at IBM to enable the solutions in terms of the iPaaS to be enabled through agents. One is, you want to introduce MCP in terms of as a gateway, a secured gateway. Think about an API gateway, right? You had before API gateways to govern your APIs, who's doing what, what is the authentication control, what is the control mechanisms, what is the policy mechanisms that you want to have. Think of MCP as something similar in terms of, what in the AI world. What AI, what agents do you want to come in and talk? What is the policy that you want to manage? What is the controls that you want to put in? What is the enablement that you want to do in terms of security? That is one of the key pieces in terms of what you want to provide. And there's also the need for the ability for agents to talk to other agents. That's where the agent control protocol comes in. So really what we're doing is, if you look at it in the future, what was iPaaS, what is all of this stuff is going to get disintegrated in terms of agents, the ability for external entities to talk to the various services that's part of your integration solution, and how do you do that in a controlled manner, in a secure manner that works with your policies and works with your experiences and what you want to drive in the solution itself. So what is this, right? Rowan mentioned this, IBM Web Methods Hybrid Integration. This is the solution that's bringing together the components and integration components we had with Web Methods and with IBM. So let me just step back a little bit on why do we need all of this stuff, all these different things out there. Enterprises are very siloed, right? You got your ERP systems, you got your finance systems, you got, different HR systems that are out there. Nobody thinks about, hey, if I need to do a payroll, I need to go talk to the HR system, to the finance system, to some other payment system, all of these things. It's all siloed. That's unfortunately how enterprises are built today in terms of what it is. Everybody worries about their area. And there's, silos out there that are there. The other challenge that we're seeing is, before everything may have been on-premise, things are on-premise, things are in public clouds, things are in private clouds in terms of where the capabilities are. So it's becoming, complex, and there's this whole chaos of connectivity that's needed in terms of addressing all these different silos of applications. And integration is not a one-sided thing, right? I think Rowan mentioned and Wade mentioned this in terms of people have like 3 integration tools, 2 API management tools, and it's like, oh, you need to do events, go buy one for events, go buy Kafka, go buy this. Oh, do you need to do B2B partners? Oh, go buy some solution for B2B integration. Oh, I need an Amazon API gateway, I need an enterprise API gateway, I need a microservice. There's this tool sprawl that's out there, right? It's like integration apps are siloed, finance apps, all of this sort of stuff, HR apps, none of these talk to each other. Enterprise integration tools are siloed. Oh, go buy 10 of these tools, 5 of these tools, all of this, causing more problems, another set of silos. The deployment is siloed in terms of, hey, I want on this cloud and on-premise and all of that. Creates a big mess in terms of what we have. This is the big challenge that we have in the enterprise today in terms of silos, silos, silos. Siloed tools, siloed deployment models, siloed sort of enterprise applications, and how do you bring all of this together? That is the vision that we have at IBM in terms of creating a unified solution, regardless of the deployment pattern you have, regardless of the sort of integration pattern you need, regardless of where you need to go, and the experiences matter. What does all of these silos do? They have disjoint customer experiences, disjoint employee experiences, disjoint partner experiences. One solution, and all of this control through a single control plane, the hybrid control plane. And it has to be hybrid, right? Because we got to look at all the different deployment patterns and different areas that we have in terms of what we do. So really, regardless that a runtime is operating on premise, private cloud, public cloud, regardless of you have gateways or API gateways that could be from IBM, could be from web methods, could be from AWS, could be from Azure. A lot of these federation, right? All of that is fine. We want to support. We understand what is happening in terms of the full sprawl of the enterprise and the complexity of the enterprise, and ensure that we bring, of course, AI, as we talked about, as part of the solution, but really looking at integration as a holistic solution, all managed centrally, but with the runtimes, with the data being where they need to be. That's really what we are focused on in terms of the IBM web methods, hybrid iPaaS. We're supporting all the IBM technologies. We're supporting all the, what we came in from web methods, all of those capabilities as well, into a unified solution so that you have one solution for, you want to do B2B integration, you want to do file transfers, you want to do app integration, you want to connect your ERP system, you want to do, manage your event streams, you want to manage your messaging, whatever it is, we have one unified solution. All of that powered by AI, enabling you to build AI and intelligence into your applications, and in the end, really enabling overall the business agility that is needed in terms of what you're looking for, as opposed to buying 10 solutions and creating more and more sprawl. So we're excited about that. We'll be doing much more detailed, deep dives today. As you can see, we're peeling the onion a bit more, each session getting more and more in-depth in the set of tools and capabilities, and going from there in what we want to do. So I want to invite Rashmi to come in and talk a little bit about some of the actual customer examples and use cases on how customers are using the solution to drive value.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So you heard about the connected enterprise, and you heard about integration and AI. Now you're probably thinking, wow, this is quite a bit. How are customers bringing this to life, right? So I'm going to give you 3 really quick examples here on how customers are using some of these technologies together to bring real-life solutions together. Now, we don't need to go very far. Many of you are probably Netflix users. Yeah? Show of hands. Netflix? There you go. You guys see the engagement, the user engagement that Netflix is driving. They don't allow you to leave that application. The minute you're done watching a show or a movie, the very next second, they know exactly what you want to watch next, right? What is happening there? That's event-driven technologies at play, right? Think about the autonomous driverless cars these days. Who's taken a ride on a driverless autonomous taxi? There you go. Perfect. I got some hands there. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I see tons of Waymos in the San Francisco city. Now they've gotten so good that they've even brought it into the Bay Area suburbs. So we see that a lot. It's so fascinating to see how they process events. It is hundreds, maybe thousands of events that they have to look at every second to see what is going on around the autonomous vehicle, right? It has to make live decisions to ensure that there's driverless safety and passenger safety to go from point A to point B, right? Take a look at the banking arena. Many of you may be very familiar with financial services, banks, insurance companies. You use your credit cards on a regular basis. What happens at that point? The minute you swipe your credit card, there's tons of events going off in the banking system. Who's the owner? Who rang the credit card? Did I get, are you shopping in an area where you've never shopped before? Should I trigger off a notification? Should I trigger off an alert? There's lots of things happening in that area. So event-driven notifications or event-driven approaches in enterprises are becoming really popular. Combined with AI, they are delivering unparalleled business value. There's one other example I'd leave you with on how AI and event-driven APIs are coming together. We have a customer, a large banking client, who actually receives feedback from their clients as an event feed, right? And they've been noticing that every time they receive these events or these customer feedback, and there's a negative feedback in play, they see the customers also looking for things like, how do I close my account? How do I withdraw my funds? And there's a potential client attrition at play here. So what this customer has actually done is they employed IBM's watsonx models to do live sentiment analysis as the customer feedback comes in. And they look at the tone of the feedback. If it's negative, if it's positive, depending upon that, they immediately shoot off a response to the client. And that has really helped the clients understand, all right, I submitted something that's negative, I'm being heard, I'm being listened to, and the bank is taking care of me. So some of these type of real life examples are definitely being put into play with very high business value. Let's look at a second example here on digital labor. You might wonder where digital labor fits into play here. Prashanth was actually showing it was sort of a map of all the integration spaces or domains and technologies. If you saw one on hyper-automation and where he was talking a little bit about robotic hyper-automation, that's where the digital labor thing fits in. A few years ago when we talked about digital labor, it really meant that these were humans specialized with certain digital skills. That has evolved so much over the years. And now there's a whole category of software robots that are actually doing the work, doing the tasks for you, executing on these processes in partnership with human employees, right? That is what we consider digital labor or digital employees of today. Couple examples. Amazon uses digital employees today in their supply chain process. Go check the inventory, go check the stock, see if there's enough for me to fulfill the orders. Go check pricing, come back to human, help them process the orders. All of those routine sort of, the tasks that were done by humans more in repetitive fashion have now been offloaded to some of the digital employees. We at IBM have actually adopted it, we've really embraced some of the digital employee process in our own HR systems. We have something called Ask HR, that's our digital employee. I as a manager, can actually talk to the digital employee and say, ask HR and say, hey, I have this particular employee in my team, I want to transfer this employee from this department to that. Or I have this wonderful employee on my team who I want to, give a big promotion to and a big raise to. How do I do it? And immediately the Ask HR system starts to work with me on who's the employee, do you know where the location is, where do you want to move them to? There's all these details. It processes that task for me. So what has happened in the process? I have not needed to know whether IBM is using a Workday system or a SuccessFactors system or some other custom homegrown HR system in the background. I just interacting with the digital employee who's able to help me get my work done as a people manager, right? These are all great examples of digital employees and digital labor coming to bear. Take a look at the Better Business Bureau here. We have it, they've saved over 1,000 labor hours, and they have saved up to $1.5 million annually by just going through, by using the digital labor process in their accreditation process, right? Same thing for Flow Career, their interview as a service platform. They're actually using our IBM Watson Orchestrate, which is our digital labor solution, by the way, to automate some of the interview scheduling. Now, before I leave this, I want to tie back one thing. I did say it was tied to hyper-automation and things like that. But many of you are, deep dive, we're thick in the integration space. You know that the essence of integration is connectivity, right? We're talking to hundreds, thousands of applications in today's environment, databases, you're talking to a Salesforce, a Workday, an Order Desk, and so on. How do you talk to various applications here? Almost every solution, like our IBM Web Methods hybrid integration solution, for example, has a robust connectivity framework. We provide connectors out of box for you to immediately connect and link into any application and system that you have in your environment. Those same connectors are leveraged by our digital employees. That is how they conduct their tasks, by touching the end systems, right? So if I have my Ask HR system, that's probably using a connector, SuccessFactors or Workday connector in order to be able to drive some of those tasks, right? All right, let's go to the third one here. The code generation piece with generative AI plays a critical role in the world of integration. You heard Suraj talk about the API or the AI assistant. We're already using our own Watson X code assistant from IBM to deliver some of those capabilities, to generate code, to validate code, to be able to know if you're on the latest version of Java, and if you're not, being able to update it on the fly. All of those types of things are being done by code assistants. And they are critical in our world of integration because you're developing integration code, you're developing integration flows. To be able to do it with a full programmatic fashion or low code, no code, doesn't matter which experience you're using. With the click of a button or with a natural language conversation with the AI engine, you should be able to generate the code that you need, right? So these are key accelerators. If I remember, I just want to leave you with one nugget here. Gartner, the analyst Gartner, came out with a great report on code generation and AI-based code validation. I think it was about a year ago. They said if you can use many of these processes and gain some immediate benefits, right? Okay, my code quality is going to increase. I'm going to be able to do my testing faster and so on. But with consistent and systematic use of some of the code generation techniques in your systems, you're going to find much more deeper benefits as you deploy it. For example, you'll find happier development teams. You'll have many of your senior engineers and your developers are going to be much happier focusing just on the complex problems, leaving some of the simpler things to AI engines to deal with, right? You're also going to be seeing faster time to market. So these are some of the key benefits that Gartner has said that if you use it over time, you're likely to even double the 20 to 40% productivity that you see. You're likely to double that over time, right? Leave you with that and give you back to Prashanth here to close it. I hope you enjoyed the case studies. I'd love to know if all of you are kind of diving into your own case studies as you get into your world of integration and connectivity. So please say hi and reach out to us after this session to share some of your own stories with us.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thanks. Stay back, please. Stay back.
Go ahead.
Good session. So thanks to Rashmi and Suraj, right? I think interesting points. So I want to conclude this session with a message over here. Not a message, or the point I want to bring into the table, right, for all the folks here. There are customers, there are IBMers, and of course the pragmaedge, right? So all of us are there. So what we can do as a team. So I think see, if you go look at the slides, there are 3 things. Collaborate. In that, like, you co-create, accelerate, scale. So how all of these things can happen? I'll go back with one of the examples with Wage mentioned earlier, right? See, one of the products that Pragma has developed and, like, pretty widely used across the multiple customers is about the PCM that has been built. So it's all about how did it come? Because, like, there was a problem statement that's coming from the customer. They knew it is a problem. Then there is the product that was there that was bringing in the best of the capabilities. And then there was a team who are specialized, who understands this thing, how to solutionize. 3 teams came together and built that particular product, and that is pretty well used there. The point what I'm trying to bring in here is, earlier we talked about, I think Rashmi also talked, I also talked, I think Rowan, a lot of us talked about, hey, it will bring in 30%, 40%, 4x, 3x. So it can all happen, and it becomes really a reality. So when the 3 teams work together, right? So one is a person who is actually experiencing it, the customer team, so they can bring the right statements, so the problem statements, and then, like, bring the products, right? Inbuilt into that, so that the right suitable capability or the feature of the product is brought in, and the right solution guy, they come together. I'm sure with that kind of a product that is built, or that kind of a solution that is built, which is a co-created and accelerated, it will eventually bring in the acceleration of implementing solutions. And since it is developed as a product or a solution, it can scale, right? It can scale to the various needs of a customer and across. I think that's what I want to end with. And thanks once again for your time, and thanks Suraj and Rashmi.